Most people think manipulation only happens in relationships. They imagine toxic partners, emotional games, and personal betrayal. But the truth is far more subtle. Some of the most calculated psychological manipulation happens in places you go every day. Places that look professional, structured, and safe. The workplace. A space where smiles can hide strategy, where praise can mask control, and where silence can be more powerful than words. The dangerous part is that most people never even realize it is happening. They just feel drained, confused, and slowly lose confidence without knowing why. I want you to think about this carefully. Have you ever felt like you were working hard but somehow not being recognized? Or noticed that someone else seemed to move ahead without doing more than you? Or maybe you have felt subtly pressured, controlled, or mentally exhausted at work without a clear reason. These are not always coincidences. Workplace environments are full of hidden psychological dynamics, not always malicious but often strategic. In this video, I'm going to break down the dark psychology of workplace manipulation, not to make you distrust everyone, but to help you see clearly. Because once you understand these patterns, you stop being unconsciously affected by them. At its core, workplace manipulation is about influence without awareness. It is not always loud or aggressive. In fact, the most effective forms are quiet and indirect. They operate through perception, emotion, and subtle control of narratives. One of the most common tactics is impression management. This is when someone carefully controls how others see them. They may appear hardworking, cooperative, and reliable in front of authority figures, while behaving very differently in less visible situations. Another tactic is credit shifting. This happens when someone subtly attaches themselves to your work or contributions. They may support you publicly, but position themselves in a way that makes it seem like they played a larger role than they actually did. Then there is strategic agreement. Some individuals will consistently agree with higher authority figures, not because they believe in what is being said, but because alignment creates favor. Over time, this builds trust with leadership. Even if it lacks authenticity, these behaviors are not always obvious. Because they are socially acceptable on the surface, they do not break rules. They operate within them. Imagine a workplace scenario. You and a colleague are working on the same project. You put in hours of focused effort, solving problems and building ideas. During meetings, your colleague speaks confidently about the project, summarizing progress and highlighting outcomes. They mention your name briefly, but frame the narrative in a way that centers themselves. Management begins associating the success of the project with them. You feel overlooked, but you cannot clearly explain why. Another example is subtle undermining. A coworker may appear supportive in conversations with you, but make small comments about you to others. Nothing direct, nothing aggressive, just enough to create doubt. Over time, this shapes how others perceive you without you ever being directly confronted. There are also situations where managers use emotional pressure. They may frame extra work as loyalty, making you feel guilty for setting boundaries. They might say things like, "I thought you were more committed," or "We all have to sacrifice sometimes." These statements are not commands, but they influence your decisions. Slowly, you begin prioritizing approval over your own limits. These tactics work because they target fundamental human psychology. One of the strongest drivers is the need for social acceptance. In a workplace, being liked and accepted often feels just as important as performing well. This makes people more vulnerable to influence. There is also authority bias. When someone is in a position of power, their behavior is less likely to be questioned. Even subtle actions carry more weight. Another key factor is ambiguity. Workplace roles and expectations are not always clearly defined. This creates space for interpretation. And where there is interpretation, there is opportunity for manipulation. Emotional triggers also play a role. Fear of losing status, fear of rejection, and desire for recognition can all be used to influence behavior. When these emotions are activated, logical thinking often takes a step back. There is also a concept called cognitive dissonance. When something feels off but does not match your expectations, your mind tries to rationalize it instead of confronting it. This allows subtle manipulation to continue without resistance. Protecting yourself in these environments starts with awareness, not reaction. The goal is not to become defensive, but to become observant. Pay attention to patterns, not isolated incidents. Notice how people behave consistently over time, not just in specific situations. Separate perception from reality. Just because someone appears confident or respected does not mean their actions are aligned with integrity. Keep track of your contributions, not for ego but for clarity. This helps you stay grounded in your own value, regardless of how others present things. Set quiet boundaries. You do not always need confrontation. Sometimes clarity in your own actions is enough. Learn to pause before reacting emotionally. When you feel pressure, take a step back and ask yourself whether the situation is truly urgent or psychologically framed to feel urgent. The more control you have over your responses, the less influence others have over you. Here is the shift that changes how you see everything. The workplace is not just about performance. It is also about perception. But perception without awareness can control you. When you understand this, you stop relying only on effort and start paying attention to dynamics. You simply become more conscious of the environment you are in. You stop assuming fairness and start observing reality. Workplace manipulation is not always obvious. It does not always look like conflict or hostility. Often it looks like normal behavior. That is what makes it powerful. But once you begin to understand the psychology behind it, you start to notice the patterns, the subtle shifts, the quiet strategies, the hidden dynamics. And most importantly, you stop internalizing things that were never truly about you. Because awareness does not make you cynical. It makes you clear. And once you see clearly, you move differently. You think differently. You protect your energy without losing your direction.